Hey, what's going on with your family? Torson T's Guitars coming at you from New York, man. Um, are Chinese guitars junk? I can tell you they can be. I can tell you they can be. To be honest with you, we've gotten our share of them. You know, we've gotten our share of them. I'm sure other companies do too. And it's not just from one factory. You know, we use three different factories to manufacture our guitars at different times of the year. We use some one of the two of the factories we use actually are companies that make a lot of guitars for a lot of big name companies, and we get to piggyback off the back of these bigger companies in order to keep the prices down and things like that. So it works out good for us, you know, and we end up, you know, last on the totem pole, but. And then, you know, sometimes it'll take us a few months extra to get our guitars because, like I said, it depends on the time of the year. But there's just bigger companies that order way more guitars than we do. But we're able to get that same quality out of there, right? And let's talk about the same quality. We all get the same quality, I can assure you. All the same things happen to our company that happen to some of the other bigger companies. And so it confuses me how people can send out guitars without opening a box. That confuses. That's. I'm going to tell you something, man. Um, we've had just a couple of things, right? So they'll switch components on you and not tell you. Okay, they'll change up a neck on you. Won't tell you. They'll put dime size pots when you paid for full size CTS pots. These are all things they'll do. They'll put you ask for one switch, they'll put in another switch, and we get production samples, so we catch all that before that happens, and I continue to do. Just so you know, for to get 6 guitars express shipped to me, that's about $500, and I spend that $500 because I don't want to have a whole shipment of guitars come in that are unrepairable. How's that? That's a good word for it, unrepairable. In other words, you're just kind of stuck with what you got at that point. And by the time you get these guitars, they're paid for. You know, so it's not that company's headache anymore. It's your headache now, and that's just kind of that's kind of the way that things the way that things work in this industry. You know, you get what you pay for. I've gotten in house here. You know, I do side work for customers locally here, and sometimes for some of our customers that have guitars. And I'm not going to mention the name of the company or anything like that, but I can guarantee you that I've gotten calls on 3 of the same guitars. They all have high frets, and they're about $350 plus shipping to get these guitars. And when I say high frets, I mean unplayable, to where you're going to get dead frets. Even with the action over 2.5, you still have dead frets. So I know, because 3 calls on a relatively new guitar, um, they got a bad batch of guitars. That's what happened, and they're not fixing them. I can tell you that. So be buyer beware on that deal. You know, again, it's not ethical for me to name other companies that you know that do this, but you know, $345 guitar, I can tell you that. So if you're shopping for a $345 guitar and you have to pay shipping on that guitar, I would definitely think twice about that one. Because here's the bottom line: in order for us to do a fret level on is probably about $175 to do a complete fret level. And these guitars don't have one high fret. You know, they've got several. And when I say several, I mean over a half a dozen, 3/4 of a dozen, and one of them over a dozen. And these are just the 3 that I've heard about in the last 3 weeks. And the reason that I get the calls is because people know that we make guitars with stainless steel frets, and I'm not afraid to do fret levels on stainless steel frets, and I'm not afraid to work on stainless steel frets. Most shops don't want to mess with it, just so you guys know. They just don't. So if you get a guitar with high frets, you're gonna pay a premium. Is kind of what I'm saying, because it takes a long time to do those. It's not like doing a nickel fret. It's just not. You know, those you can file those down pretty quick. Taping takes longer than the actual filing on that deal. Not so on the stainless. So, but they know it. I know this company knows that their guitars are jacked up, because we all know when our guitars are jacked up, right? I'll tell you some of the things that our company has gone through. And again, 3 companies. Well, it'll be 3 years. March 21st, I want to say. is our T's Guitars birthday, right? And so we've gotten guitars that have absolutely dead pickups. We've gotten guitars where the push was the pull and the pull was the push. It was wired wrong, right? Broken solders, or just not even soldered, not even, just missed solders, like an input jack will just be laying in there with the wires on there. Um, we got one shipment of guitars where every single G string had a ping in the nut, so we had to recut that G string. The nuts were cut fine, but the G string, every time you do a bend on it, and that's typically where a lot of people do bend. You do bends on every string, but the G string is pretty prevalent, and you'd hear this big giant ping, and that would go through the amp. So we had to file all those nuts down. Broken strings because of sharp saddles, right? You get a run of guitars, and there's a piece of whatever in the mold that makes these saddles, and every time you put a string on it, you're going to pop a string, and it's usually the E string. So then we have to take a Dremel and we have to go in there, or a file, and go in there and we have to clean that out. So misaligned necks, right? Sometimes they just come from the factory misaligned. Sometimes they're banged around in shipping. And when I say banged around in shipping, these things, they go from the manufacturer to a warehouse, from the warehouse to the shipping yard, from the shipping yard it gets, carted all over the place before it gets on the container, and then the container gets put on a boat, and then it comes back here, and it's the same process when it gets here. So that box of guitars has been moved, or those cases of guitars have been moved like 10 times, and they get banged around. All it takes is one guy to drop you got 10 opportunities to drop a pallet of guitars. Our first guitar shipment, we had, out of 400 guitars or 380 guitars, we had 59 of them that they were ruined because they were that damaged. Sometimes the body routes are off by just enough. If you got a guitar with a tremolo on it, and that trem's hanging up on the side of the route, that's an ineffective guitar. It's unplayable, right? Fret grit. All the guitars have fret grit unless somebody goes through and does that, or you get extremely lucky and it's just the right time of the year. Because these things, they sit on a ship for 45 days, and the necks, believe it or not, are the first thing that's produced in a factory on a guitar. They make all the necks, and then they do the rest of the deal, and sometimes the rest of the deal can be 2 or 3 months later, depending on if they got all the parts or they're waiting on parts. High frets, just so everybody knows, and this is just, if you've been buying guitars for a long time, and you're a low action guitar player, you're going to know that most guitars under $1,000, sometimes even a little higher, they come with high frets. That's kind of the deal with it, And if you're buying a $150 to $250 guitar, $300 guitar, it's probably going to have high frets on it. It shouldn't be like unplayable high frets, but they're not perfectly level. Okay, you get paint blemishes on these guitars, usually in the neck pocket, sometimes other places, right? Sometimes you get bodies that have defective CNC routes, and they'll have a little groove or something like that in the belly carb or wherever it is, or whatever. I don't know how that works, but we've gotten those. The guitars we get, they're never intonated 100% ever. We pay for a setup. The setup that we get is all the guitars I've gotten lately. The action's been like 2.5, and that's not set up to me. The nuts all need to be cut on those guitars. Either broken tuners, right? When you get the locking tuners and you have the little locks on them, sometimes those are just broken off. We have to replace those too. Sticky tuners, when they're going through the assembly process and they're screwing those things in, they're not screwing them with a little screwdriver. They've got guns like that on the tuners. Sometimes those are just too tight. You can't turn your tuner, so we have to actually adjust the tuners. Talked about they switch components on you, and they'll do that often. They do that whenever they can get away with it. So we have a process to where before the guitars are manufactured, or shipped to us, I should say, we have samples sent to us, and they don't pick the samples. We have somebody go into their factory and pick out the samples, and then they ship them, and that costs a little bit of money. So we take care of that for you. Those are things that can go wrong. And so what do we do at T's Guitar? Every guitar that you get from T's Guitar will be an open box, because that guitar comes out and it goes on one of 3 workbenches, and it gets checked and it gets set up. Our regular setup is a good setup. There's nothing wrong with the setup on it. The pro setup if you want it high and tight, that's exactly what it's going to be with the Pro setup. I mean, we do everything with that. We lube the nut, we condition the fretboard. If the frets are not level, we'll level the frets for you. We lube the tuners on it. We lube the saddles on it. We put the little shorty saddle screws in your bridge for you. It's intonated. You get your string choice. You get your action choice. Things like that. You're not going to find that anywhere for $50. I guarantee it's worth the $50. But let's say you don't want to do that. You know how to do all that stuff on your own. Knock yourself out. You'll get the guitar. It'll be playable. It'll be intonated. We'll knock all the grit off the frets. In the Pro setup, we polish them up to 3,000, and you're probably going to get about 1,500 on the regular setup, which is, there's no grit on it. They're just not real super shiny like they are on the Pro setup. But it's intonated. The action is set right about 175, and it's very playable. If the nut's cut, we'll cut the nut. Make sure that that's as well as playable. That is playable as well. That's kind of what we do. We go over everything. We check every single, like the tuning key, the nuts on the tuning keys. Those, they come loose, so we tighten them up, so you're not getting that guitar. Every time you open a guitar up and you get a guitar, you got to check all these little things on it. Well, we do that for you, so you don't have to. We want to make sure that you're happy. And the other thing too that we have done lately, which has been very successful, is we've switched our packaging, and we've gone to what they call KK boxes. And KK boxes have not just one layer of cardboard, but 2 layers of little Ks in each corrugation, right? So you've got 2 layers of those. And then those are double boxed on the Tele series guitars, the more expensive ones. But we still, and those are craft boxes as well. And we're doing the single box on the new ST that's coming out that's got a new facelift, new colors, new additions to it. There's some pretty cool stuff on this new ST1 that's coming out. Those will be here in April, end of March, April. But we haven't had any returns or UPS damage. I've gotten pictures of mangled boxes, but none of the guitars are damaged. So we're very successful at picking the right boxes, and that's not cheap, just so you know. So when we double box these guitars, it takes up more room in the container because they're bigger boxes. On the ST1s, it doesn't take up more room, but the boxes still cost more too, right? So, we've gone up a little bit in price, and it's mostly for the packaging, and the shipping costs have gone up as well. I don't know how the tariffs are going to affect us yet. I know that they didn't even really pay the tariffs from the last time it went up. From the last time we had this president in office, they just didn't pay the tariffs. I believe that not to be the case this time. I think they're going to do what they said they were going to do last time, and so that's going to be the least of it. It could get worse. I don't think it'll get much worse, but we'll figure it out. We're not going to. It's not one of those deals to where the price of guitars are going to double or anything like that. They're not. If you have a 10% from Tees guitars, if we have a 10% tariff, we'll probably have to mark that. We'll probably have to mark that up 10%, right? And we have to, because we're paying. I'm on such a small profit margin as it is right now. Getting these guitars out in your guys' hands, and thank you. Coming up on 3 years, we'll probably be at 2,000 guitars, and that's huge for a small company like ours. So I do want to thank you, and that's all from people like you, liking, subscribing, sharing our posts, commenting on our posts. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we do some TikTok videos, obviously on YouTube. I try to put content out that A, provides you with the transparency of our company, but B, it maybe gives you some tips on some kind, some setup stuff, which hopefully I'll have time to do. I've been busy, man. We've sold over half of our inventory on the new E-Series SBH, and we've only had those guitars. They came in on I believe the 10th, so that's 45 days, 46 days now, and we sold over half the inventory, which is huge, right? That's what we want to do. We want to get that up to like 13 guitars a day, and we're sitting about 3 to 4 a day. I think it's 3.2 the last time I checked, which is good. And so steady growth. I can't grow too big because A, I don't have the inventory. And B, it just, it's a lot of work, man. 7 days a week. You sell 3 guitars a day. Some guitars you only sell. Some days you sell 1 guitar. Other days you sell 7, 8, 9, 10 guitars. That's a lot of guitars to get set up because we try to ship these things out the next day, and we usually do. And if we get a big order night like that, I got a couple of guys that come in, or over the weekend every Monday. There's 3 of us that set up guitars, so it's not just me doing the setups, but during the week I'll piddle around and knock out the guitars and stuff like that, and I enjoy doing it. I have a lot of fun doing it. I think that's about it on this. I appreciate your support. I honestly, man, thank you guys and gals. Right? I appreciate your support. Everything we do, we do it for you, and it's just a lot of fun for me, man. It's a great way to spend what I thought was going to be my retirement. Ended up not being retired at all, and I wake up every morning looking forward to the next day, which is pretty cool. Life doesn't get much better than that, right? Looking forward to going to work. So, as always, family, rock on, and we'll see you next time, man.